Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller-Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Upscale HR and ACE, the HR exam. Today's podcast is part of a series on the Workology Podcast focused on the roles and responsibilities of the Chief Human Resources Officer, or CHRO. The CHRO is sometimes called the Chief People Officer, and it is an executive level role that deals with managing human resources as well as with organizational development and implementing policies of change to improve the overall efficiency of the company. Today, I'm joined by Elizabeth Baxter. She's the Chief People Officer with one of my favorite restaurants, Torchys Tacos. Prior to her time at Torchys Tacos, Elizabeth led a successful career in human resources at Walmart, starting with them as an associate relations manager and then progressing within 7 years as their senior director of performance management and global COE. Elizabeth, welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Let's start with some background. You've been in HR for, and I hate to say it, 20 years, almost 20 years.
My gosh, you're aging me.
I know. We all it's good and bad. Like, you have the experience and you understand the role, you understand the business. How have your roles evolved over time into that Chief People Officer role with Torchys?
Well, it's funny to hear you say 20 years because I remember early in my years, like thinking, how do people have that much experience, or how do you get to the next job? Now to have somebody introduce me and say I have 20 years of experience, it's like my internal reaction is time flies, you know? I think my roles have evolved basically just passion by loving people. So what's interesting is I have a degree in advertising, marketing, and PR in a little place called Wichita, Kansas at Wichita State. You know, my degree wasn't in HR, but I knew early on in all the different jobs I did, starting at the bottom, that it was all about people. So looking back and thinking, like, how did I get to the Chief People Officer role? I think it goes back again to what I said, which was just a passion for people. And I think when you find your niche and you know what you love, that helps you get to the next role and the next role and the next role, whatever that passion might be. So it's interesting to think, you know, some of my first jobs were like folding panties at Victoria's Secret and folding clothes at the Gap, and then to, you know, open my own clothing business, to then working at the largest company in the world, Walmart, and having seven different jobs with them before coming to Torchys. You know, I look back and I'm like, all those different jobs taught me something different that helped me be a better leader and be passionate about developing others and getting them realizing that, you know, whatever company you work for, but definitely with Torchys, that there's opportunity for advancement. It's about developing your people, and that's where you find success, no matter what kind of role you're playing or what kind of business you're in. You know, if you have people that love their job, you develop them, you invest in them, they give back tenfold, and that's what makes your jobs, your restaurants, your businesses successful. So it's really awesome to be in that Chief HR role and really be able to do that for people on a large scale and in a growing company. So I'm definitely lucky to have my role.
I love how diverse your experience is. Spent time as an entrepreneur, worked a lot in retail in different spaces, spent time at one of the largest employers in the world, Walmart, and then moved into this Chief HR Officer role at Torchy. So it's I feel like there's more HR leaders that have this kind of path than maybe we would think, just because also I feel like retail and restaurant or hospitality HR, when you get that experience in there, it really sets you up to be able to work in any type of work environment.
Yeah, I remember actually interviewing for this Chief HR role with Torchys, and you know, it even being brought up like, hey, you don't have restaurant experience. And I look back, August will be my third year with Torchys. And what's interesting now, and looking at it with a completely different set of eyes, is, you know, people are just people, whether they're at a restaurant, they're buying groceries at Walmart, they're buying clothes at a clothing store. They all want to be treated the best way they can, if they're the guest, and they want to have that memorable experience. And if they're the team member, they want to be treated with respect. They want to know what they can do and not do. They want to know that they're making the best money they can and they're in a great environment. So it's interesting because I think there's a lot of scrutiny when people go from one kind of career to a different, like, hey, do you have the experience you need? But I look at it differently, which is just people are people, and they want a great experience no matter what side of the barrel you're on. And I think if you look at it that way, you've got a much more flexible point of view. And I think especially after a year of a pandemic too, that's really more true than ever. It's just that people want to feel safe and happy, and like their money and their dollar meant something, and they got the most out of their dollar, and or their level of sweat equity, whatever it might be, if it's that team member. But people want to be treated fairly and well, and that's what either gets a guest coming back, or it gets a team member to stay for years with you. Either side of the coin.
I wanted to ask you about what skills and experiences that you believe are absolute requirements for CHROs, especially thinking maybe about someone who's just starting out in their HR career.
I talked to a lot of students this last beginning of this summer. We started an intern program, and I remember actually kind of talking about this even past the HR role. But I think, especially starting out is like, it's okay to be curious and to try different things. I think if you fast forward to like what something or a requirement that has to be in the HR role is, I think one, it's a passion for people. And it's also that willingness to develop and realize that everybody has hopes and dreams. If it's about advancement, they want to be known they've got opportunity. If it's a people situation that's tricky, they want to be, comforted and known that they're going to be treated fairly. I think it goes back to, if you're going to be in the HR role at all, you've got to have a love for people. And someone that's really successful in the HR world realizes that the complexity of people in HR is that every situation is unique. And so even if you have best class standards or best ways you might handle something, people still want to be dealt with on an individual level and be felt that in their specific situation, they were treated the most fair they could. And so it makes something where you might want to just say, well, this is the policy, more difficult. But the beauty of it is if you're a real people person and a lover of people, you have that ability to be specific in that situation and make a lasting imprint. So I really feel like it's not necessarily the experience that they have to have, but it's more the passion around, a specific part of HR, or just, this passion for making things right, making things simpler in a difficult job or in a difficult world. That's what's going to set somebody apart in the HR role in general.
I think it's true, and it really speaks to the culture at Torchys and how you fit in to that space. Because in order for Torchys to be successful, in order for the HR function to be successful, you have to have the people first qualities, and that is everybody in the organization too.
Thank you for saying that.
It's true. I want to talk more about the restaurant industry, because I think that the entire industry has dealt with a lot we all have, but especially the restaurant space in the last year. Can you talk a little bit about 2020 and maybe some different things that your team had to cope with?
Yeah, I mean, I think like most restaurant companies, it felt like overnight that everything changed in an instant. And I remember early on, the leadership team, I actually called them and said, I know it's the weekend, but this is all changing, and we've got to figure out how are we going to handle furloughing people, and are we going to close restaurants and locations, and how are we going to do takeout, and all these, just literally nothing was the same. And I remember everybody coming around my kitchen table really early on and saying like, okay, what are we going to do? And so we knew that because everything was changing, we had to make some quick decisions. And we also knew that we would be better together than we would be apart. And that if we said, we're still going to put our people first above the business, that we would come out stronger. And what I love about our CEO, GJ Hart, is, earlier on, he's like, we're going to be stronger for this. And I still think, 18 months and counting in, we're still saying that we are stronger than we were 18 months ago. And I don't know that every business can say that, but I think it goes back to us committing to having that culture that put our people first, and continuing to have damn good food, even if everything changed. Some of the key things that we dealt with was there were weeks where restaurant locations were closed. And so, we weren't allowed to have dine-in customers. And overnight we were 100%, carry delivery. And luckily we had been prepping and knew, like with DoorDash and all the different delivery companies, that's where, business was heading before the pandemic. But then definitely during the pandemic, it was like people still wanted to eat their fresh tacos, but they just, weren't allowed to eat them in the dining room. So what did a damn good taco look like fresh, if it's being delivered to the doorstep or if somebody's picking it up? And so we also, overnight had to change our offerings. And we saw a lot of other restaurants doing this early on, but we were one of the first where we transitioned over to something called family packs and at-home margarita kits. And I think that really saved us early on, because they still wanted to eat Torchy's, but not necessarily at an individual level. And I remember, my son and I being cooped up in the house for weeks and working 24/7. And it was like, I still wanted my tacos. And there was something really comforting about like being able to go to my Torchy's and get a family pack that for $30 feeds 4 to 5 people, which is an unbelievable value, and could make several meals off of it. And then secondarily, we were one of the first businesses that did the at-home fresh margarita kits. And I remember in those early days, like we were selling out of them before it felt like they were even on the menu. And so people, I think it really resonated with a chord with people, because they still wanted to drink, and people were under stress, and they still wanted to have a good time, if it was on the back porch with the family or if it was with their neighbor, versus going into a restaurant. And so I think what's great about us is, like, because we started as a food truck and that was a different way to get food, we very easily transitioned back into that in making sure that we had great off-premise varieties and ways for pickup and delivery, and people could actually text us or call, and we'd bring the food out to their cars. And then the other thing that we also did is, in certain local communities, we actually did signups in neighborhoods, and we actually brought Torchies to their neighborhoods. And so we did a lot of different things just to say, like, hey, we are Torchy's family. We also understand, that people are scared and worried, but we still want to make Torchies available. And I think we did some good things as far as like adjusting to what the guests needed. I think the other big, huge piece of it for me was, we knew early on that we needed some sort of playbook that really focused on like the safety of our guest and the safety of our team member. I remember actually going out to a restaurant, a non-Torchy's restaurant, and eating, and the experience being so off and so uncomfortable that I thought, am I being stupid eating in this restaurant? It feels unsafe. And luckily I took back that experience and said, like, this is not how we ever want to make anybody feel in a Torchy's. And so, very quickly we really transitioned to focusing on training and making our team members feel safe first, so that they then can make the guest feel safe. And for us, that was really about, how do they feel safe, and having open dialogue, and two, talking about like what difficult conversations might occur and how would you approach those conversations with a guest, and knowing too that everybody felt very different about a pandemic. Everybody felt very different about the level of safety in a restaurant, felt different about the safety of food in general. And so really wanted to embrace our team members and make them feel safe in their jobs. The other important thing that Torchy's did is, early on, we did have to furlough some team members, but we brought them on back in a matter of weeks. And we were one of the very few restaurants that kept insurance coverage, offered free COVID shots and free testing, paid for our team members to be safe and secure in times where they thought they might have been exposed. And really, because of those safety precautions, we stayed at a very low minimum and had a good procedure in dealing with these situations, even in an early time where we weren't really sure how bad it was going to be. And then secondarily, like, I think because we embraced our team members so well, in turn, our guests felt safer. And, we never really had any huge problems or ordeals where there was guest unsafety. And as you, I'm sure, saw in the news, there was a lot of that where people felt like they were eating in unsafe restaurants. And so I think it went back to us again being focused on our teams and making them feel safe, that then they could embrace the guests and make them feel safe. There's so many things I look back at that we can be proud of during the pandemic. And I think that we've ended up being a stronger team. I'll tell you that, we're one of the only restaurant businesses that during the pandemic ended opening 12 restaurants in 3 new states. And we hired over 1,000 new team members in a year where other teams and restaurants were either completely closing locations or closing their doors altogether. So I know from a Torchy's perspective, we really feel lucky that we were able to continue to grow and to react in such a scary times.
You're talking about all the safety things, and I'm thinking, like, it doesn't even now really seem real. It
Right?
because we're kind of coming out of this. And then I'm also thinking, like, you were committed to employees, to the team members, and to the customers, and you were still able to grow. And like you said, add 1,000 new positions, hire for another 1,000 people at your organization. There are not very many restaurants in the US and probably anywhere that can say that, which says a lot to the culture, and then just how you guys have had to flex and so quickly and pivot.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a lot to be proud of. And the thing I go back to, I think my biggest takeaways were just, early on, we said we're going to get through this together. And, secondarily, I think we said we're putting the people first, which in the chief HR role, you couldn't ask for more for us to be united in that way. Because I know for a fact, I have other peers that didn't have that situation. So I was lucky in that retrospect. But I think too that, when restaurants, teams, companies talk about culture, like, a culture is alive or dead based in its people and in the actual practices that they live out in their daily roles and in the hard times and the good times. And so, I think our culture is alive and deeper and better than ever because of these hard times, because we made quick decisions and we stayed consistent. And in a scary time, we decided to have like gentleness and love and put our people first when we could have said like, hey, we're going to put the dollar first. I hope and I truly believe that that's going to continue to pay us back in years to come. Because I'll tell you, even now, this last year, most companies' turnover is at an ultimate high, and we're, actually at an ultimate low. Like comparatively, at our MP level, which is our store manager level, we're 68% lower than company comparison, which is just nuts. We basically have hardly any turn in that position at the store manager level. And even at the hourly level, which, as an HR, that's like the position you just can't keep an hourly level. And we're down 6% over this last year, which is really crazy in these nutty times when we had to let people go and we had to make choices. But we also, even in those team members we did have to furlough, like one of the cool things we did is like every couple of days we'd have somebody personally reach out to them and check on them and see if they're safe and let them know we wanted to bring them back. And I just don't know that every other company had that much level of detail around their people, but I think that that's what's gonna make the difference. And it's really given us some great momentum with our teams is really like taking that extra time and going that extra mile.
I want to ask you about training, because in our prep call, the Torchys team and the HR team have I feel like a really unique training program that kind of starts from the ground up. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, the first year I was here, almost 3 years ago, I knew one of our biggest opportunities was our management and training program. We had a management and training program, but we weren't getting great results like, most other comparison companies, but I knew we needed to overhaul it. So we had been working on it for a while. we'd finally gotten to this place right before pre-COVID where like, okay, we're officially starting this. And it was funny because we had all the teams pulled together and learning and development and our training ops team. And we were starting to make good headway. And then of course, COVID happened. And I actually remember that team coming to me and saying like, oh my gosh, are we going to lose our jobs? And oh my gosh, are some of us going to be furloughed? And when I, kind of said was like, no, me and the leadership team and specifically our CEO was like, no, let's double down. Like, let's take this time, this pause where everything was kind of like in transition and keep working on this program. And what was great is like in this scary time, we not only said like, no, you're not leaving. We want to keep this whole team whole because we do want to continue to grow as a company. We've got work to do for that growth. Is that all of a sudden it like freed up this space, and it was like we almost revved up the engine and started working on it a lot quicker. And so one of the huge positives that came out of this last year is that we completely reinvented our new MIT program. And, a program that we thought was going to take 2 years, we got done in a year because we were really able to just like grasp onto it and say, we're going to take this time and do the right thing. And I will tell you, I'm so proud of it because I look back and I feel like our program is unique because it's a 10-week program for our management levels, 5 of it being focused about them being in stores as leaders and doing shifts, and the other 5 of it being around learning every station within the restaurant and then specific skills to what their specific opportunities are. So, if you were to take 2 managers side by side that started, if one of them's been, let's say, a manager before in a restaurant, they're not going to need as much training in restaurant leadership as a brand new trainer. And so what's great about our program is that we really specify it according to what the team member, the new manager's team needs are, and making sure that at the end of their 10 weeks, they've gotten what they need to be a great manager or what we consider successful at Torchys. So what I will tell you is that we're seeing amazing and great results out of that. This last year, since the new MIT program, we already have 42 graduates out of that program. We've only had 1 out of the 42 not be successful, which is almost unheard of. And in those 42, there's been over 26,000 training hours. And so what's great is if you look at it, it's all electronic. There's QR codes. They can actually go in and scan and say, what am I doing for the day? And it's all disciplined and different things that they need to be experiencing as leaders in the building, or specific skills with culinary, or specific leadership and accessibility things to continue to make them feel comfortable to have difficult conversations or to schedule somebody. Or whatever it might be. What's great is at the end, they do assessments and they make sure that they understand and actually have the skills they need. And if they don't, they retake a piece of it. And then there's checks along the way with, actual different leaders, whether it's a culinary coach, a training coach, a manager in the building, a market manager. They're meeting with all different levels of their tenured leaders to check their skills, make sure they're a great focus culturally, and that they really feel like by the end of this, they're ready to go whatever into that role. And so what's amazing is, again, we're getting great success out of it, but now we're starting to tweak that program down to a supervisor hourly level and test that program as well. And so being able to really put this out there has been huge, because with us planning on opening, over 15 restaurants every year for the next 5 years or more, our growth is going to be huge, and finding leaders and training them up quickly and getting them long-term to be focused on our culture and damn good food, which is our motto. That's a hard thing to get skilled up in. And for us program so far to be super successful, and for us to be turning out leaders, and out of the 42, only have 1 that wasn't a good fit. I consider that 1 that wasn't a good fit, we figured out they weren't a good fit, right? And still for that to be the number out of a year's worth of graduates, that's pretty unbelievable. And so a lot to be proud of as far as Torchy's really investing in the training of its team, especially with us expanding and going as quickly as we are across the United States.
Let's take a reset. This is Jessica Miller Merrill, and you are listening to the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Upskill HR and ACE, the HR exam. This series, the CHRO series, is powered by Daily Pay, and we're talking about the role of the CHRO. And in this episode, we're focused on the restaurant industry. We're talking with Elizabeth Baxter, the Chief People Officer with Torchys Tacos. Personal and professional development is essential for successful HR leaders. Join Upskill HR to access live training, community, and over 100 on-demand courses for the dynamic leader. HR Research credits available. Visit upskillhr.com for more. Torchys is such a great brand. I am a fan. I told you that before. I love everything about Torchys. It's a fun environment to eat. I've never had a bad experience. I think from a customer perspective, that is what drives people in. Like, there's a number of different things, but also from an employee perspective. And there is so much talk right now about the challenges in retention, especially in the restaurant industry. You talked a little bit about this, but I wanted to talk in more depth about what do you think is the reason for the low turnover at Torchys?
Just to reiterate, I think one, we've got a great training program. I think two, we've also haven't spoken so much about this, invested in some really great tools on the front end with hiring. So making sure early on that, we are actually doing an assessment, and are they a good fit for our brand? Meaning, do they connect to us in, feeling like they can be a genuine person that wants to talk to our guest and have that lasting experience, is all about and passionate about our completely 100% scratch made, beautiful, damn good food, and loves it and is kind of a food taco junkie. And then, do they see a career with Torchys? And those are things that we're looking for. And so, we're able to be a little bit choosier with our team members that we pick. I think secondarily, we talk a lot about, like, if they're a good fit, then how culturally do we make them feel accepted day one? And, I think that's a miss on a lot of companies' parts and it's hard when business is turning and things are crazy. Not everybody gets a great experience and people get left behind in the dust. But I think when you combine with, are they a good fit, to then did they get the right training experience? And then number three, like, did you make them feel welcome day one? And that goes back to the culture of us, having tenacity and being original and making people feel like they can be themselves. Have we shown them respect in their new job and respect as a human being? Have we shown them a connection to their local community and all the different things that we're doing to make people realize that not only do they want to be a long-term guest with Torchys, but they also might want to be a team member? And then do we treat them with honor and show them that, through trust and hard work, they can have a great job at Torchys and have fun doing it and have, damn good tacos and really just a better life with Torchys with a lot of opportunity. And I think culturally, we really try to make people feel that, whether they're a guest or a team member. But I think from a team member perspective, if we really can deliver that early on, nobody ever wants to leave. And, that's kind of what's magical. Even being the chief HR 3 years later, is I think, like, this role has just gotten better and better. And I want every team member down to the cashier that just started yesterday to feel that too, because Torchys is something special. It is a company that started in one trailer in Austin, and now we're in 93 stores. We just had a store open today across 11 states, and we plan on opening across more states this year and ending up being at our 100th store by the end of this year. And so our growth is crazy. And I have to attribute that to, we have a really great culture that is really living and breathing and that other companies would love to have. And ours is just an actual reality. And so, I think my biggest goal is that over the next, 5 years, like, that we keep that culture and it grows as we grow, because that's what makes us special. And that's what's going to continue to make us successful. And it's also what's going to continue to drive retention, because when people are happy, they don't want to leave. They want to find out what more they can do for a company. And so that's really what we're focused on, is showing our team members the opportunity that lives within Torchys.
Thank you for sharing. And I think that we're hearing in the news all the horror stories of how restaurants can't retain their workers or they can't hire people right now. And you guys are the opposite of that. And I think it is because of the training, the culture that you have, and all the investments that you're making in the people, and you have been making since long before the pandemic.
What's interesting is I do think like out right now, there's a hiring issue in general. It's not a restaurant thing. I think it's an everybody thing. What is helping us combat that is being a cool, edgy brand and investing in the team and slowing down a little bit. And, I'm here to also say that our team is really like dug in and said, if there's stores that have opportunities, like how do we help them more? And how do we resonate and connect back to a community? And, hey, if they're looking for cashiers, doing different things like getting our team members to internally bring other friends and say like, hey, Sarah, I see that, I check you out 3 times a week at Torchy's. Have you thought about ever working here a couple of shifts? And we get a lot of new team members that way too. It's just like, we have like true food taco junkie fans that love Torchy's that end up saying, well, I want free tacos. And, if you work here, you can get them. And so that helps too, is really digging in and always looking for that great team member. And I think the other thing that we really focus on, and we even saw in, in our recent engagement survey with our teams, is like, people stay at Torchy's because we've been able to be flexible with them and focus on a work-life balance, which, as you know, is like really hard in any business. It's hard to be in a store and actually even say that you have a work-life balance. And so being able to say like, hey, it's okay to be a mom and be a manager for us, or it's okay to go to school and only be able to work these many shifts. Like, we're willing to do things and go the extra mile, where other companies might say, these are the shifts, and if you can't work them, we're going to turn you. And so we just have a different perspective in the way we approach people. And I think that has helped us with some of our turnover and retention as well.
It's funny that you're talking about this, because I just got a Facebook message from somebody who was like, they're messing with my schedule. They've made a change. Like, what right do I have? Because they're trying to schedule me for my shift outside my current availability. So that really does go a long way.
It does.
One of the things that we also talked about, and I will link to in the show notes, Torchy's career website, so you can take a look for yourself. But I wanted to ask you about what the store hiring process looks like as you grow. What tools or tech or digital resources are you using to make it easier for the candidate and also for you and your team?
Yeah, so the last 3 years, I'll tell you, this year, we also implemented something that we call My Torchys, which is our new HRIS program. It was several years in the making, and it's actually UltiPro that built it for us. And we've been, very, very happy with the result of it. So it's a one-stop shop. That's our HR info system that the team now uses. And prior to that, we were using 8 different systems for HR functions, which is crazy. And a lot of different companies are in that same situation. So when we moved over to that, though, we really spent the time with our hiring process to make sure that, it's in one system and it's as seamless as possible. So we completely overhauled and made sure that our questions make sense by position that they're applying. We also added some screening questions, like I mentioned before, that help us really quickly determine if they're a good fit for Torchy's, and then what role they'd be a good fit for based off what they're interested in naturally. And then the third element of it is that in-person interview. So we've done a lot of things even with the hiring button and invested some money in some easier hiring buttons with Indeed. So everything's auto-connected. And if you click that easy hire button, within minutes, you're already applied with Torchy's versus having to go into our website and do everything separately. And so we've gotten some really great feedback about that. We also have overhauled some of our perks. We just announced this last week, actually, that we're offering an hourly healthcare program to those that might not necessarily get coverage. And that's a huge win for us. So we're also really looking at how we keep our benefits savvy, even down to the hourly level, and giving programs and discounts even on safe work shoes, and just different things that will make people's lives better no matter what level they're at. We also have some financial institution and educational pieces that we're adding more at the manager level, and making sure that they understand how to invest their money wisely as they become managers with us. So we're doing a lot of things perks and benefits wise that keep us very cutting edge. And then also just making sure that hiring process is as easy as possible, but also that we are asking the right questions for the right role, because we're really focused on, do we have the right person in the right role at the right time at the right store? And, that's a lot of rights that you have to figure out so that you don't get it wrong. But I think the more time we take on that, even if it's easier for the team member, then we're at a much better place. And we're continuing to stay focused on making sure that our hiring efforts, our branding, all of that stuff is very attractive for whatever level we're looking for.
Elizabeth, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us. I have one more question for you, and I want to make it restaurant industry specific. And so, do you have any advice for HR leaders who are working in the restaurant industry right now? What can you share with them, maybe just to help take some things off their plate, or where they should maybe shift their focus?
Something this last year I've been telling my team is, especially in the field of HR and with the pandemic and lots of, different things in the way the world is there's a lot of craziness going on. But what I've told my team this last year is, like, it doesn't really matter what the question is. Love should always be the answer. And what I mean with that is, like, however we react with our teams, staying thoughtful and slowing down and being more intentional about how we can help that team member or that guest in their specific situation. That's what gives you lasting effect. That's what gives us lasting success at Torchy's. And I think, sometimes it's okay to slow down and realize, like, what's the loving way to answer somebody? What's the loving way to handle a difficult situation, especially whoever it is, because the world is crazy right now. And I think everybody reacts better to love than they do to drama or overreaction or even just hardness. And I think there's a lot of that out there right now. I think, in talking to my team about that, I know we've been better for it. So that would be my advice to everybody, is just, no matter what the question is, I think if you react in a loving way, in a genuine way, that's what people react to. And people might not remember how, what you said or the actions you took, but they'll never forget the way that you made them feel.
I agree. I've been saying, when somebody irritates me, or I don't understand, or maybe I don't like the energy that they're sending to me, I just have to remind that they're trying to come from a place of love. It kind of helps my response a little bit. But I love yours too. And I do think we need to respond more with love, because we just don't know what people are going through behind the scenes or in their life.
For sure. Interesting last couple of years.
For sure. And I know it's going to continue to be an interesting couple more years as we come out of this pandemic. I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us. We'll be sure to include your LinkedIn profile, and then, of course, the Torchys career site on our resources over on the specific episode page. So thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was fun.
Are you loving the Workology podcast? Our Workology community reaches over 600,000 HR leaders every single month. Want to be a sponsor? Reach out to us at workology.com/advertising. It's really interesting to delve into how a role like the CHRO, whose experience more closely connects them to the strategy and operations of the overall business and how it works with the rest of the company leadership team, especially around innovation, training, culture, and employee development. Elizabeth had some great insights. Not only did she graduate from Wichita State University, I'm a Kansas girl myself, but I also see so many great things that they are doing as someone who has worked in the retail space. You can't have retention numbers like Torchys does without some really great programs and a focus on training, culture, and employee engagement. The CHRO doesn't just lead within the HR organization. This role is key to structuring the leadership for the company's executive team. I appreciate Elizabeth taking the time to share her knowledge and talk with us today. Thank you for joining the Workology Podcast, sponsored by Upskill HR and ACE the HR Exam. This series, the CHRO series, is powered by Daily Pay. This podcast is for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. I know that's you. That's why we're here to drive some change. My name is Jessica Miller Merrill. Until next time, visit Workology.com to listen to all our previous podcast episodes.